Hi, everybody. This is Jill.
And this is Corinne.
And you're listening to Scream Girl Squad. So we just watched a movie called Little Monsters.
Not to be confused with the 1989 Fred Savage movie.
This did not star Fred Savage, but it did star another curly-haired fella named Josh Gad.
I thought you were talking about the other guy for a minute. I was like, his hair's not curly.
Yeah.
So, like Little Monsters from 1989, this was more comedy than horror.
Oh, much more.
Yeah, way more. 100% more on the comedy end of the spectrum than on the horror end.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it was a comedy that happened to use a horror trope.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
It was not scary in the slightest, nor did it try to be.
No, it didn't. Which I appreciated, honestly.
Yes, honestly.
Like, it knew what it wanted to be, and it went for it, and it did it really well.
Yes.
And so I should back up a little bit, I guess. This is a Hulu original. Just came out like 2 weeks ago. And on Hulu and on IMDb, they describe it as a horror comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed that on the movie poster, which is amazing, by the way, and you should definitely look at it, they describe it as a zombie comedy. And I thought that was a lot more...
fitting?
Yeah, that was a lot more accurate.
Absolutely.
So, spoiler-free synopsis. Jill summed it up quite nicely in a text to her friend Paige, urging her to watch this movie. It is about a kindergarten field trip surviving a zombie outbreak.
Yeah.
In Australia.
That's it.
That's it. That's all you need to know. And Jill and I settled on watching this movie after one of those adventures on Netflix where you're scrolling through and you're looking for things and you can't find anything that's really striking your fancy. It had to fit a couple of boxes for us. We wanted to watch something new that neither of us had watched before.
Yep.
And both of us kind of had sort of heavy days, so I think we were both in the mood for something lighthearted.
Yeah, so either something so bad it was funny, or something actually funny. And when scrolling through Netflix, sometimes you can tell this is going to be so bad it's funny, and sometimes you can't. And there was none that we could say for certain, and we didn't want to get stuck in something that wasn't gonna make us laugh.
Yeah. It was tricky to tell with Netflix, too, because I don't know if this is something that changed recently or it was just a fluke with today, but normally when you're looking at a title on Netflix, it plays you a little preview. And today it was playing what seemed like random clips from the film.
That weren't even, like, enticing clips?
No.
It was, like, the worst clips they could show you to get you to want to watch a movie. So none of them looked appealing.
Yeah, some of them demonstrated some pretty terrifically bad acting. And
oh, yeah. And we were just like, no.
Fast no.
Real fast, yeah. By the way, apologize to everyone. I'm sick again. We're pretty sure I'm just going to be sick until spring, so.
Yep, and then allergy season will kick in.
I don't really get allergies.
No seasonal allergies?
Knock on wood, but that's never been a thing for me, so.
That's lucky.
Yeah.
So, yet again, Jill sounds awesome.
I'm all gravelly and awesome.
I love
it.
Again. It just makes your laugh sound like even more distinctive. Sometimes I think our voices need that extra level of difference. So
we do laugh in surround sound. So saith your husband.
Well, half the time he's sat like between us. So. Anyway, this movie, speaking of my husband, he wasn't able to watch it with us, and we both felt like that was too bad. Yeah. He missed out, I feel like.
I think he would have loved this movie, so maybe we'll have to watch it with him again.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, because again, it is new, it might have flown under your radar, it is a Hulu original, so it's not something that's probably being pushed to you unless you're on a Hulu plan that has commercials, but it's worth watching. I feel like we should jump in and rate it.
Absolutely. So, as a reminder, we rate on two different things, on fright factor and enjoyability. So fright factor we rate out of 5 based on something from the movie. So we're going to rate it on gooey zombies for this movie. And then enjoyability, we rate on one of our favorite snacks because we like to eat and we are munch mouths. So hashtag munch mouths.
One of these days. Next time I print stickers, I might put that at the bottom instead of our tagline.
I love it.
So this week, Jill brought over yet another Rachel treat.
Living with Rachel has its perks.
Rachel made from scratch like oatmeal peanut butter bars with dark chocolate frosting. And they are legit.
She also made homemade peanut butter cups, and I just realized I forgot to bring you some.
Homemade peanut butter cups?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
It was Steven's birthday, and he loves peanut butter cups, so that's what she did for him.
Dang, that sounds awesome. I'm going to follow you home and get one.
Okay. I'll bring you some. We have a bunch.
So, on a scale of 1 to 5 peanut butter bars, Jill, what are your thoughts on Little Monsters?
I would say 4. It wasn't perfect for me. We can get into that, but I really liked it.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a solid 4 as well. Not only did I have a really fun time with it, but you laughed so hard at so many times. And Jill has this amazing and contagious laugh. And especially Jill will laugh at something that's like kind of mean. And hearing Jill laugh in a cruel way, that's what really gets me. That's what warms the cockles of my heart. So I had a great time with this movie. And I'm going to say it just one more time. If you haven't seen it, pause this podcast and go watch it because...
With fair warning, it is rated R with good reason.
Oh, that's true.
So, just a heads up. Lots of language. Gore is so-so.
Yeah.
Some drug use.
Adult situations. Some things that made Jill comment, we can't describe this scene on the podcast.
Yep.
Yes, that is correct. It is very much rated R. Like, they don't rate it because it's a Hulu original, but that's
yeah,
what it would be.
Yeah.
How about fright rating? You mentioned gore a minute ago.
Fright rating a big old 0.
Yeah, not scary
It is not
at all.
scary in the slightest. They didn't even try to scare you. No
I
jump
thought about
scenes.
giving it 1 gooey zombie for gore alone, but there's gore in all kinds of stuff that's not scary, so...
And it wasn't scary gore by any means. It was like Monty Python gore, if anything.
Yeah. It kind of felt like... did you see Turbo Kid?
Mm-mm.
Turbo Kid's great. This movie reminded me of Turbo Kid for a few different reasons. One, it had kind of more of a smaller production company feel to it. There are no special effects. Everything's practical. The filmmaking felt very intimate. You felt like you were right there next to the action. They did a really good job with that. But there's just kind of like a cinematic quality that I feel like comes with smaller houses. And so this one reminded me of like Cooties and Turbo Kid for that reason and because it had pretty similar levels of gore. If you haven't seen Turbo Kid, it's not a scary movie at all. It's a post-apocalyptic adventure movie. The gore in that one is crazy over the top. Like people's heads get chopped off and geysers of blood.
Sounds amazing. That's my kind of thing.
It's pretty great and the soundtrack is magical. It's all by Le Matos, which is one of my favorite synthwave bands, but anyway, this one,
totally
it felt in a similar league. So if you enjoyed Cooties, for sure, I think you would like Little Monsters. So a solid 4, peanut butter bar, enjoyability, big ol' round 0 for gooey zombies. Not scary whatsoever.
Not in the least bit scary.
But an all-around super fun movie.
Yeah. So, the cast, it stars Lupita Nyong'o.
Who you might recognize from Us, Black Panther.
12 Years a Slave,
Yep.
I think we said. She is freaking gorgeous, so let's just talk about that straight up.
And
She is such a beautiful woman, and they played on that in this movie, which I thought was great. But she's just fun to watch. Like, she's one of those people that's really pretty, but not in the girls hate her kind of way. And we all know that's a thing. I think we've talked about it before, that sometimes there are actresses that you're like, she's too pretty and she's probably horrible and I hate her.
And I hate her.
For no reason
Out of
other
pure
than like,
jealousy.
she's pretty and I wish I looked like her. Yeah. Lupita is like gorgeous but likable, which is always a bonus in my book. So
she is hands down my favorite character in this movie.
Oh, for sure.
She kicked so much butt. and was just amazing.
Absolutely.
Total fun to watch. And I would like her yellow dress that she was wearing.
So cute.
Super cute. And it looked like it might have pockets.
It did look like it might have pockets.
Yeah.
So
starring opposite her was
Alexander England, who I honestly was not familiar with. And I looked him up, and he was in such treasures as Alien Covenant and Gods of Egypt.
Yeah, Alien Covenant's the only thing that I vaguely recognized him from, because he wasn't one of the main characters in that.
Yeah, and everything else, aren't things I've heard of. So...
He wasn't the most familiar guy.
Yeah.
But he did have kind of a vague familiarity to him. He felt kind of like maybe he's a Hemsworth by, distant cousin or something, you know?
Because he was handsome, but not, super handsome, if that makes sense. But I liked it.
Yeah.
Anyway. And then the other star-ish person is Josh Gad, who I just love.
Yes.
He's a Broadway alum, now famous actor, and I love him dearly. So
was he Broadway first and then a famous actor after?
I believe he was Broadway first, because I think his, breakout roles in Book of Mormon.
On Broadway?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
he was in the original cast.
Okay, and I guess maybe the first movie I saw him in was that one where he plays Rainn Wilson's nephew and they're in a band together.
The Rocker.
Yeah, The Rocker.
Mm-hmm.
With Emma Stone.
He's been in a lot of things. He was in an episode of ER.
Everyone was in an episode of ER. If you weren't in Law and Order, you were on ER.
Yeah, and now Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah. And Josh Gad did an awesome job. And he kind of played against type a little bit.
Oh, for sure. He always plays, the nice guy.
Uh-huh.
And, the funny guy. And in this, he is, the grumpiest, angry drunk. And it's
not
fabulous. No, there's nothing redeeming about this guy.
If he's funny, he wasn't meaning to be.
Yeah.
So he did a great job. And then I have no idea what the name of the fourth big star of this film is, because he is a 5-year-old boy. But one of the main characters in the story is the nephew, Felix, who is the best.
Oh my gosh, he is the cutest little thing in the whole world. And he loves Darth Vader and tractors, and it just makes my heart happy.
And he did a great job.
Such a good job. All the little kids in this movie were so good.
Yeah, they were all really genuine and believable, to the point where you were wondering how much the director actually told them. And
there were plenty of scenes where, people would be swearing up a storm, but it never showed the kids.
Yes.
It would just show the person, and so you were like, okay, the kids are probably not in the room for this. Hopefully not. But, yeah, it was funny.
Yeah. So, really great cast all around. I think that definitely had a big impact on how enjoyable this movie was.
Absolutely.
Because they all nailed it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's go ahead and dive in and talk spoilers. And again, if you haven't watched it, I loved it. You should go watch it and then let us spoil it for you after. Yeah. You can join in the conversation.
And for those of you who are only here for spoilers, listen away.
All right, let's do it.
Spoilers. So the movie starts out with people just yelling at each other. In various situations. They're in the grocery store.
They're at dinner with friends who are very uncomfortable.
In a car outside Home Depot.
It's a couple named Dave and Sarah.
But you don't know who they are at first.
Not at first.
It doesn't tell you anything.
You can tell they're a couple.
Yes.
And you can tell their relationship is not going well at all.
It is on the downward turn.
So they're fighting, and the music that they're playing is kind of like the beginning of Monsters, Inc.
Yes.
As this couple is just constantly swearing at each other. She's throwing yogurt at him in the grocery store. And then it takes this sort of sudden, poignant turn, and the music shifts, and all of a sudden, it's not so funny anymore that they're fighting, and they're clearly breaking up. And
for sure,
you immediately get why, because in that sort of fighting montage, in between their fights, they show the boyfriend, Dave, and in between, busking on the corner with a stack of amps and his electric guitar, and not sounding good at all.
Well, and he, is playing metal on a street corner by himself.
Yeah.
Just his guitar and his amp on a street corner, just blasting horrible music.
Yeah, it's not even good metal.
No.
And there's that one video that I love of that kid who's sort of busking Yngwie Malmsteen style.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Anyway, he's not that guy.
No.
The cops are like, move it along.
Yeah.
He sits at home all day smoking pot and playing VR and getting himself into solo adult situations.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it seems like the woman is kind of like a little bit more driven. She's working really hard. She's very like well put together. You can tell there's a big disconnect there.
She's like a real estate person. Like you can see her standing in front of a big real estate sign, like in a suit, and they're on the phone yelling at each other.
So they break up.
Mm-hmm. Big shocker. They have like a really awkward fight scene too that made me laugh because we've all been there when you're out with a big group and two people start fighting and everyone is sitting there being super uncomfortable. And like, what are you supposed to do?
You can't do
like,
anything.
It's like when you're a kid and you're over at your friend's house and their mom is yelling at them and you're just standing there in the corner like looking at your shoes, hoping that she'll start yelling at you too for not, just being there.
To this
like,
day, I feel uncomfortable
like
when a child is being yelled at by their parents.
You're like, I'm sorry, I didn't make it. Oh, it's not me. Okay, we're good. But yeah, it's like, like their friends are all just sitting there like staring at the table and looking at each other like, what do we do? As these two are like yelling at each other. Sorry, that part just made me laugh really
It was really well done.
Because we've all been
to
there.
The movie. They weren't even done fighting and Jill turned to me and said, all right, we made a good decision. Because it just started the movie off with
just the way they did it with like the cheery, happy music as they were like yelling at each other the whole time.
So you're not shocked at all when they break up.
No.
And Dave, the boyfriend, he wakes up in the morning on like a futon in the living room with a very small child staring down at him. And you put together through the dialogue that the small child is his nephew. His name is Felix. He's adorable right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate. Like, the uncle wakes up and he starts swearing and he's like, we're not supposed to swear. And then he talks about how his teacher, Miss Caroline, makes him sing the Somebody Swore song.
Yeah.
And there's some cute little song that I wish I remembered and I didn't, but...
I'm glad you don't remember it, because I picture you singing it at me.
I know. I can't.
So Felix loves tractors. He's very interested in them. He also appears to love a very strange-looking television show featuring a man in a ridiculous green suit named Teddy McGiggle.
Teddy McGiggle. And he has a little dance where he just, like, lifts up his elbows and shakes his arms.
Dance.
Yeah. And talks to animals and has, it's every kid's show you've ever seen, right?
Yeah, it reminded me of the one with the touring singers that was
The
really
Wiggles.
popular. The Wiggles, yeah.
Wiggles.
I think it was kind of a play on the Wiggles if it was
Which
just
Mick
one
Giggles.
awkward guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's played by Josh Gad, who does this like cute little Josh Gad voice and all the little gimmicks and stuff. Mm-hmm. He calls kids Kiddly Winks.
Kiddly Winks.
Which is borderline creepy to tell kids that. So Felix is a big fan. They sit down to dinner with Felix's mom, Tess, who is Dave's older sister. Mm-hmm. And from their interactions, you totally get the idea that Dave is, number one, pretty self-centered.
Yeah.
Two, never really grew up.
Kind of useless.
Yeah. He's super selfish right out the gate. She's explaining about how Felix is allergic to a whole lot of things, and he's totally brushing it off. Like, he's not interested in learning about his nephew's life-threatening allergies or even protecting his nephew. It just isn't about him, so he doesn't care.
Well, and like she says, he's allergic to gluten, and he's like, no one's allergic to gluten. That's not a thing. And like going off on this whole big deal. And
so he's
allergic to dairy, and he's like, what is this
nuts.
kid? Yeah. Like,
he's like, I'm going to go get a real pizza or something. But the language coming out of Dave's mouth in front of his 5-year-old nephew is amazing and vulgar and incredibly graphic.
Which, okay, is why I didn't enjoy it 5 out of 5. This movie was a little too graphic and vulgar for me in places.
Oh,
gotcha. There comes a point where it's there for humor and it's there just to be vulgar. And that's when I enjoy things less. Is it's like, okay, now you're just doing it for the sake of doing it and
Gotcha.
not for laugh effect.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Anyway.
Totally.
So it took away a little of the enjoyability for me.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't bug me.
Yeah.
But, so I took one away because there were definitely some parts that I felt like bogged down a teensy bit.
Yeah.
So, in this conversation over dinner, Dave is talking to Tess about how the reason that he and Sarah broke up and what they were fighting about is because she wanted kids and he wasn't ready. And she does something that I think made sense in the context of Dave's life, but annoys the freaking crap out of real life Corinne, where when I'm talking to people about my life choices and I say that I'm not interested in having children, they always respond like, there's nothing to be scared of, you'd be a great mom. And I'm like, I'm not scared of anything. I just lack the drive.
Yeah.
But in Dave's case, I do feel like his backstory, which he talks about later, it is more of a fear thing, I guess. Anyway, so she makes the point that if he would just maybe grow up a little bit and have proven to his girlfriend that he loved her and supported her, then maybe she wouldn't have broken up with him. So...
Sorry, I'm laughing already.
He gets the bright idea to wake his nephew up
in the middle of the night
and put him in a Darth Vader costume and drag him across town to him and Sarah's old apartment.
Where he's written on a pizza box, "Will you marry me?" to give to Darth Vader to hold up for this girl.
And he keeps like coaching Felix, hey, when you're in the Darth Vader costume, you stay in character. And every time he says that, the cute little 5-year-old boy, like, makes his voice go on. It's so cute.
It was the funniest thing.
So they get to the old apartment, and Darth Vader opens the door. And Sarah is engaged in an adult activity with another man.
Yes.
Facing the door.
So awkward.
Felix gets a full view of it. And of course, Dave walks in handling it very maturely.
Yeah. Starts freaking out.
Ends up getting in a fist fight with the guy and getting like his lips split open. And then poor cute little Darth Vader holds up the "Will you marry me?" pizza box. And Sarah's rant to Dave about why, this last-ditch effort at romance is not enough to overcome all of his bigger issues, and that it wasn't even that he didn't want kids, but just that he's incapable of loving someone else as much as he cares about himself.
And then he needed to, grow up and figure himself out.
And his response is to march into the bedroom, grab the tallest bong I've ever seen, and march
giant bong. And storm out.
He's like, "You'll never see me again," and slams the door, and the camera pulls back, and little Darth Vader Felix is still standing in the kitchen.
And he opens the door and grabs Felix out again, and then Felix holds up his hand like he's trying to close the door with the force. And David just reaches out and closes the door in front of him.
So cute. Just
so cute. It's kind of like that Super Bowl commercial with the car, and the little boy thinks he can start the car with the force, and the dad uses the remote control start. And the kid dressed as Darth Vader thinks he really has the force. It kind of reminded me of that.
Yep. Pretty magical moment in any child's life to think that you have superpowers.
Absolutely.
Yes. So the next day, Dave takes Felix to school in the morning, and Felix is kind of explaining
his sister. Well, okay. First, they get home.
Oh yeah,
and his sister is pissed because she's like, "You can't just wake up a child in the middle of the night and take him across town because you want to."
And Felix kind of explains what he saw.
You have to start. And she is just freaking out. She's just like, "What is wrong with you?" And she's like, "You have to step it up. You have to start pulling your weight." And she's like, "Now put Felix to bed." And so David says to Felix, "Your mom's really mad, so let's play the zombie game, but we just have to keep it on mute."
Oh yeah, because she was also angry that he'd been letting Felix play a VR super violent video game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like, "We can play, but let's be quiet." So then he takes him to school.
Yeah, he takes him to school the next day, and Felix is kind of explaining about, these kids over here are bullies. They make fun of me for my allergies, and they make fun of me for the food mom packs me. And then David calls one of the kids a douchebag.
Oh my god.
And Felix asks what that is.
And Dave explains it.
The literal definition.
The literal definition of a douchebag. Which the 5-year-old kid then explains to one of his little friends later in the movie.
Which is amazing.
Amazing. Hilarious. So terrible.
That's one thing that this movie did really well, is it would draw attention to something in a very intentional way, and you'd be like, that's gonna come back later. And they never let you down. They always harvested that seed later. And that scene with explaining adult language to a small child magically came back later, and I appreciated that.
Yes.
So, they walk into Felix's classroom and show his teacher, Miss Caroline, who you'd been talking about later, and she is played by Lupita, and she is drop dead gorgeous.
Drop dead gorgeous. With the, like, just the most beautiful, like, dress, and she looks so perfectly put together, and her hair's all perfectly done, and she's like, it's like one of those slow motion moments where the wind, like, runs through her hair.
Yeah. David's immediately smitten with her. So smitten that he just starts lying his pants off. And for no reason at all claims that Felix's mom just had a mental breakdown and that's why he's at class. So he's obviously like
a really great caretaker.
Great and then he's so scatterbrained when he goes to leave that he opens a door into a small child.
Oh no, he did that on purpose.
Oh, he did it on purpose.
Because it was the little bully, the little chubby kid. So he's talking about, like, how he loves Felix and he's the best. And he would do anything for him. And then the little chubby kid goes behind the door and he pushes him. And the kid starts screaming.
That's when Jill did her cruel laugh that I love so much.
Because he did it on purpose. Because he was like, I hate this little kid.
I'll be honest, I thought you were just laughing because a kid got his face smashed by a door. I'm a little disappointed in your lack of true evil, Jill. Oh my gosh. So at the end of the day, Dave comes back to pick up Felix. And he starts spouting more BS to Miss Caroline. He's like, I'm a professional musician. Like, I'm in a working metal band and I sing. And he's wearing his band's t-shirt and it's called God's Sledgehammer.
So then she's like, oh, are you Christian? I'm Christian. And he's like, yeah,
Christian. We're definitely a Christian metal band. Just lying through his teeth. And another person comes up and explains that she can't help on the excursion, aka field trip, the next day, and Dave immediately, gallantly volunteers to help out on this field trip. And that's how he ends up on a bus the next day that has a flat tire, and Miss Caroline is singing Shake It Off by Taylor Swift while playing the ukulele.
And it's so perfect. And all the kids are like singing along and they love it.
Oh, they love it so much.
And he is sitting in the back of the bus like any normal adult would do while a bunch of 5-year-olds are singing Shake It Off while their teacher plays the ukulele. His face is just like, oh my gosh, why am I here?
Yeah, he's not a fan.
No.
The children beg Miss Caroline to play it again right after, and his face is just so filled with horror. And she, very diplomatically, spins it towards, hey kids, do you know what it means to be a professional? And they're like, yeah, it means you get paid to do something. And she's like, well, David is a professional singer, and he jumps up and is immediately like, yeah, I'm a professional singer-songwriter. I'm in a band. And he starts playing one of his metal songs on his guitar.
Which is terrible.
It's the worst. He is not a good musician whatsoever.
And so after a minute, like, Miss Caroline reaches up and touches his arm and is like, I think it's a little too intense for the kids. And all the kids' faces while he's playing it are like, they're either covering their ears or making Corinne's horrified face or like just look very confused. Like, the kids are not having it.
Yeah, they weren't super. They were even less excited to hear him sing than he was about Taylor Swift.
Yes.
So they finally get the bus running again, and they keep driving to their destination, which is a petting zoo.
Pleasant Valley.
Pleasant Valley Farm.
Pleasant Valley Farms.
Yeah. Which is conveniently located right next to a U.S. Army base.
So they drive past this U.S. Army base, and you're like, sure, that's a thing in Australia.
I think we have army bases there.
I mean, I would assume, but it says, like, United States Military Testing Facility.
Yeah. In the basement of this testing facility, there's a couple of security guards doing their patrols. A couple of Americans, one of whom is obsessed with how everything in Australia can kill you. And he's listing off all of, like, the...
snakes, spiders.
Deadly animals, venomous things.
The reasons I won't go to Australia.
Oh, I'll brave it. I'll brave it anytime.
I cannot. There are spiders the size of, like, your coffee table. I can't go. I couldn't do it.
Well, maybe it's like in Hawaii, how if you're in the touristy parts, you don't see the gigantic centipedes. But if you live there, you have to, like, bug bomb your house every 3 months and get rid of the giant bugs.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know was a thing.
I am too afraid I would accidentally see a spider the size of a table, and I can't handle it.
Fine. I'll go without you, I guess.
It's fine.
I was going to take you with me and hook you up with some Australian guy.
You can bring me one back.
In my suitcase.
Yes.
So, on their patrol, they see a zombie, like, bent over what appears to be a researcher, eating her. And their level of shock, like, is much lower than mine would be. They're like, one got out.
Yeah, like, they're just like, oh, man, not this again.
Yeah, like, it's clearly happened before.
What did they call it? Oh, one of the regeneration project people got out.
So clearly they're working on some type of, like, human regeneration thing. Very, like, Umbrella Corporation. And one of the zombies has gotten out. One of the security guards takes their little airport cart thing to go get help and leaves the other one behind, and he is immediately eaten by a zombie.
Immediately. And then the other one, like, walkie-talkies and says, like, we've got a breach, we've got someone out in Sector 4 or whatever. And the guy comes back on the radio and he's like, we've got a huge breach in Sector 5. Everybody's getting loose. And they're like, code red, red. And while this is happening, it shows the front gate of the army base. And there's a car full of tourists who are trying to get in. And this guy's trying to tell them, we're not a zoo. It's down the street, not here. Keep driving. And then he gets the call, code red. And he's like, oh no! And just starts screaming and going to the gate like,
Yeah, the tourists are just like, great. I guess we'll go.
Yeah.
So the bus that's on the way to the petting zoo, it gets passed by, like, a whole ton of Humvees and military vehicles, and all the kids are just, like, waving out the window at them. And when they get to the petting zoo, they freak out because Teddy McGiggles is there with his frog puppet companion. Frogsy, yes. So as Teddy is standing at the back of his van talking, there's, like, a man in the van operating the Frogsy puppet through, like,
it's just a little puppet that sticks out the hole in the ceiling of the van. And it's just, like, this little face. And so they're all sitting there talking with the class, and he calls Miss Caroline up to the front of the class, and he's like, aren't you pretty? And Frogsy's like, I'd like to cuddle her. And he's like, I'm sure you would. And they just talk about how pretty she is. And you can just tell by her face, like, she gets hit on all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think even Tess, Dave's sister Tess, mentioned that earlier.
Oh, yeah, that all the dads
always hit on her.
Yeah.
Oops. Notebook everywhere. They use a purposely obnoxious Teddy McGiggles song over the montage of the children having fun at the petting zoo, at, like, hanging out with a koala, which I was immediately envious of, and a suggestive scene of watching Miss Caroline milk a cow, and, like, all this weird stuff while this horrible, annoying song plays. And then they cut back to the U.S. Army base, and the front gate is just wide open, and an army of zombies is walking right out the front gate past a sign that says Pleasant Valley Farms, 500 meters.
It's really great. And then they all wander through the woods up to the mini golf course. And there's these tourists playing golf, and they're talking in another language, and you hear zombie land, blah, 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 like, and all these other, like, words that I don't understand. And then the one guy gets all excited and goes over to the zombie, like, he wants to take a picture with it, and the other person pulls up their phone to take a picture of him with a zombie, and then the guy gets eaten.
Immediately. And everyone runs.
Yeah. But at first, I think they're like, oh, it's gimmicky. Look at the zombie. It's funny. And then he gets eaten.
So I really liked the pace that they did that.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't take long at all for the zombies to infiltrate the petting zoo and start taking over.
Yes. And the way they take over is just perfect.
Yes. Very smooth infiltration. So the woman who had been on the mini golf course runs away, and she runs right past a picnic table with all the kids. And Miss Caroline is explaining, we're going to take a tractor tour through the petting zoo, and then they've got a big surprise for you when we get back.
And Felix is stoked. Felix loves tractors, which he's talked about in the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So he is so excited to ride in the tractor pull thing.
Yeah. Like where some kids have like a favorite doll, Felix has a favorite tractor.
Yeah.
He's all about the tractor ride, and Dave could not care less.
Right.
He's not having a good time.
Oh, and like somewhere in this point, he sees a ring on Miss Caroline's finger.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh yeah, my fiance Ian, blah, 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 blah. And that's when he's just like, and we're done here.
Yeah.
Like, and he is no longer trying or having fun. He doesn't care.
He's over it, because he's only there to try to get with Miss Caroline.
Yeah. So now it's pointless, and he feels trapped.
So they're on this tractor tour, and the lady that works at the farm that's driving the tractor sees something kind of weird at the sheep area, because there's a man bent over a sheep and eating its innards. So she stops the tractor and goes over to check it out and immediately gets attacked. And Miss Caroline is like, what you're doing is very inappropriate. I think that she thinks that the tractor lady is like making out with another man instead of doing her job.
Oh, she hears her swear.
Oh,
Yeah, she hears her swear. She has like a headset where she's
that's right. Everything
she's
that
been
she's saying
talking
is being broadcast.
like, hey, look at the sheep on your left, blah, 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 like when you go on a safari.
Yes.
And so she gets out and she like just starts swearing, cussing up a storm. And so the teacher gets out and she's like, you are so inappropriate. This is a tractor full of kids. Like, and then sees, oh, she got bit by a zombie.
Mm-hmm. The zombie starts chasing Miss Caroline, and she trips backwards over a pitchfork, picks it up, and the zombie impales himself on it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty gross, but also kind of awesome.
Yes.
And David figures out what's going on and is terrified, and she's screaming at him to start the tractor. And so he climbs up, but can't figure out how to drive it because...
If you don't know how to drive a tractor, why would you? And so Felix starts giving him step-by-step instructions. Because he knows tractors.
And
so he's like, the clutch is on the left. You gotta push in the clutch. And like, he knows exactly what buttons to push. And David's like, how do you know this?
I appreciated this.
It was so beautiful.
Because part of me felt like that maybe someone reading a first or third draft of this was like, hey, driving a tractor is hard. There's no way Dave would know how to drive a tractor. And so they kind of like fleshed this in afterward and were like, well, maybe Felix knows how to drive a tractor and tells him.
It was so magical.
I loved it. So, Miss Caroline gets back into the tractor. Felix drives them as far as he can until the road is blocked by a bunch of zombies eating a cow. The entire petting zoo at this point has been taken over by zombies, like, except for their group. Everyone else has been turned.
And so they decide they're going to try and get the kids somewhere safe. Mm-hmm. And so they line them all up single file. And she tells them all they're playing a game of tag.
Yes.
And all the zombies are it. And if they touch them, then they lose. So don't let them touch you, and stay in a single file line, stay all together.
Which is so clever and adorable.
Yes. And what I love about her is she teaches kindergarten. So you have to know how to entertain kids, and she's trying to keep them safe. And she does a bang up job on all counts. Mm-hmm. Like, they are not scared for 1 second this entire movie, because she's just like, we got this, let's go.
Yeah. She tells them to form a conga line.
Yeah.
And so they're all like following each other. And they make their way to the gift shop, which is like a kind of self-contained.
Yeah. But on the way, David is pulling up the rear. So he's like following the kids, carrying the kid with the walker.
Oh, yeah.
And beating off zombies with the kid's walker that are like getting too close to the line of kids.
Which was pretty great, honestly.
It was so magical.
So they make their way to the souvenir shop, which is all buttoned up all tight because someone is already hiding in there. And it's Teddy McGiggles.
Good old Josh Gad. And he starts freaking out and he's like, get away from here. This is my spot. And they're like, let us in. And she's like, I have a class full of children out here and we need somewhere safe to hide. And he's like, nope.
Yeah.
Get out. My spot. I'm safe.
He's
Leave.
like, I don't care. Lots of swear words right in front of the children. He's like, oh, you have children out there? I don't effing care.
Yeah. Cute. And that's what, because up to this point, you just seen him as this cute, happy TV personality. And now he's just like, nope. Don't care.
I love it. I love that sort of like dark, like the Krusty the Clown thing where it's like, sure, they entertain kids and they pretend to be happy, but they're really like miserable drunks who hate everything.
Because no one but Mr. Rogers is that nice all the time.
I think you're right. Yeah. So, so Teddy won't let them in, but Miss Caroline finds a little like crawly thing shaped like an animal's mouth that the kids can crawl through to get into kind of halfway relative safety. She gets the kids through there and is like beating on the interior doors, demanding Teddy let them in, and he's still refusing.
So David climbs up the wall and onto the roof and tries to find a way in. And it's one of those buildings that's like a big round building, and on the top it has, what is that called? Like, it's like a little middle thing that's full of wooden slats. It's got to have a term.
It probably does.
It makes me think of like the top of a barn, but not quite.
I do think it's like a barn. So the souvenir shop's like a little octagonal barn type building. Mm-hmm. And it has a little vent thing at the top. I almost
want to say silo, but I know it's not a silo.
No.
But
it's got 4 sides, and it's right at the peak of the barn, and it has all these little slats in it, and it's for ventilation. It's to let the hot air escape out the top. And David freaking throws himself through the slats.
He, like, tries to pry it open. He can't, and just throws himself through, and he falls through the ceiling, lands right on top of Josh Gad, and they immediately just start fighting.
Josh Gad, it's definitely Teddy McGiggle's prerogative here. Like, he could be cool about it, or he could start throwing punches. And he takes the latter and is just, like, slapping him.
Throwing punches. They're, like, throwing crap from the store at each other.
Little, like, souvenir snow globes.
David's just like, just let the kids in. And he's like, no.
David grabs a stapler and starts, like, hitting Josh Gad in the face with it.
He's like, no, my face. And he's, like, throwing snow globes at David.
It was a really well done scene.
Really hilarious fight scene.
So David wins and lets Miss Caroline and the children all into the souvenir kiosk and closes the door.
And Josh Gad is pissed. And this is when he is just swearing up a storm and real mad in front of all the kids. And the kids are all singing the swearing song. And he is, like, so mad. And so Miss Caroline goes over and grabs, I think it's a seashell, and
something
like
pointy,
stabs it into his side really hard, and he's like, ow.
But she's like blocking it from the kids.
Yeah, it's like she's standing between him and the kids, so she's like shanking him, but shielding it from the kids, and she gets like that whisper yell, and she's like, listen up. It's my job to protect these kids, and I'm gonna do it. And you're not going to stop me. And then she's like, or I will kill you. Do you understand me? And he's just like,
just like hinging at this darker past.
Yes.
And she kept telling David, call me Audrey. But her name was Miss Caroline. And Jill's like, what is her name really? And she had me wondering, like, is she even really a kindergarten teacher? Is this like a front of some kind? That's why she has 2 first names or something. But
really, she's just one of those people with 2 first names. Her name is Audrey Caroline.
Yeah.
But it was not clear. We were just like, is her name Caroline or is her name Audrey?
She's definitely showing, like, what a tough cookie she is.
Yeah.
So they cut to back outside, and the zombies, it's just carnage everywhere. They've destroyed everything. They've eaten all the farm animals. And the radio on one of the soldiers' hips, one of the zombie soldiers, cuts in and says, hey, reinforcements are coming. We're setting up a perimeter.
Yeah.
So we know that they're closing in on the petting zoo. Yeah. But the people inside don't have a cell phone signal. There's no landline inside the souvenir stand. So they're not able to communicate with the outside world.
David tries to entertain the kids. He finds a bunch of chips. And so he's like, here, everybody eat some chips. But the chips had dairy in it.
Yeah.
And so Felix starts having an allergic reaction. And David's freaking out. He's got an EpiPen, but he puts it backwards. Before he leaves, his sister gives him an EpiPen, and she's like, blue to the sky, orange in the thigh. Like, repeat it with me. And he's like, yeah, I got it. And he does it backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's like, he's got a backup pen. It's in his backpack. And they're like, where's his backpack? It's on the tractor. So they have to go get his backpack.
And David's totally going to go. Like, for once he's stepping up.
Yeah, and David's like, I'm going to go get it. And Felix is like, no, don't leave me.
Oh, and poor Felix, he's starting to get, like, blotchy cheeks. His airways are closing up.
Like he's
wheezing.
Like, wheezing. He's having a hard time breathing, and he's so scared, and he just wants his uncle. And so he's like, okay, I won't leave you. So Miss Caroline's like, I'll go. It's fine. I'll go. And then the best thing in the whole world happens. So she climbs out the roof and jumps down and just starts running past all the zombies, totally clears it all, no problem. As she's getting to the tractor, like 4 or 5 zombies come at her, and there's a shovel. And so she picks up the shovel and starts hitting them with it. And she accidentally decapitates one with the side of the shovel.
Yes.
And then it's like she gets this sense of like, well, all right then, and just cuts off all the rest of their heads.
With the side of like a metal shovel.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet.
Like my dad and the gopher.
She's getting blood all over her pretty yellow dress.
Yes.
She goes around to the back of the tractor, and every child has an identical Frogsy backpack because they're all such Freddie McGiggle fans.
Yes.
And she's like, of course. And she has to find the appropriate backpack. And then she puts it on. So she's wearing like this cute yellow sundress that's half covered in blood, this adorable frog-shaped backpack. She has a shovel in her hand, and she looks back the way she came, and there's like a horde of zombies coming towards her, and she just starts running for them with the shovel and like a battle cry.
And then it like blacks out. You don't see anything. So then cut back to the gift shop, and Felix is so scared, and he's having a really hard time, and he has this cute little girlfriend, and she's like, he's scared. What do we do? And David's like, what's his favorite song? Can we sing his favorite song? And she's like, Shake It Off. And he's like, perfectly is just like, can you tell me, how does it start? Can we sing it? And the whole class starts singing Shake It Off. And it's kind of calming him down. And as they're singing it, Miss Caroline drops through the ceiling, and she is just covered in blood and doesn't say a word, and just comes over and starts digging through the backpack and finds the EpiPen and gives it to Felix.
She's like drenched in it.
And just totally freaking awesome, because she just fought her way through an army of zombies.
Yep.
And so Felix is fine now, and everything's good. And it was like a really big moment for David's character. Like, he finally cares about somebody besides himself.
Yeah,
and
I think he saw the consequences.
Yeah, he really wants to take care of the kids and everyone.
Yeah. There are people out there who it takes desperate situations like being surrounded by zombies to grow the F up.
Yeah.
And become a caring person that's capable of thinking about someone besides themselves.
Very true.
So whatever it takes to get you there. And for David, this was it.
Yeah.
So they hear helicopters overhead, and Teddy gets so excited because Teddy McGiggles thinks he's a pretty big deal. And so he's like, of course they sent helicopters for me. So he jumps up onto the roof, climbs back up, and is waving at the helicopters, and immediately tumbles off the roof and lands on the ground surrounded by zombies. And now it's his turn to be like banging on the windows outside, like, let me in.
And Miss Caroline is kind of just like, eh. But David climbs on the roof and pulls him back up and saves his life.
Yeah, which is pretty solid. And they have a moment where Teddy is like crying on the roof, and he's talking about how this is God punishing him for being a terrible person and sleeping with all of his fans' mothers.
And just goes off on all the women he's slept with.
Yes. And in this weird way that's like a blend of shame and pride.
Yeah.
And he's very descriptive about it, and he's just like going on forever. And Dave finally holds out his hand and says, "Hi, I'm Dave." Like, hey buddy, we don't even know each other. This is so TMI. And Teddy explains that Teddy McGiggles isn't even his real name. It's Nathan. Dave's like, Nathan McGiggles. It's such a good scene. So his real name is Nathan Schneider. He's a terrible person and an alcoholic. He's despondent to, like, feel his jacket pockets and realize that every single mini bottle of liquor that he has is empty. Like, he's got nothing.
And so they go back into the gift shop, and he starts drinking anything with any alcohol content in it. Like, I think at one point he drinks hand sanitizer,
nail polish
remover. There's something, it was like a bottle of paint thinner or something that he drinks at first. I don't even know what it is. Yeah. But yeah, anything he can get his hands on. And you can tell he's an alcoholic. Like, he's like shaking and just like finding whatever he can to drink.
Yeah, he's like, if you thought Dave was selfish and egotistical at the beginning, Teddy McGiggles is like at the whole far end of the spectrum there.
It's like, as Dave grows, Teddy McGiggles sinks.
Yeah. Best name, by the way. I love how often we get to say the phrase Teddy McGiggles. So the army, they flash to a scene of some army people coming up with a plan, and they have noticed that the zombies are congregating around the souvenir stand, and so they're like, well, we'll just bomb the souvenir stand, and that'll be that.
Yeah.
And it cuts back to the kids and Miss Caroline. She's singing more songs on her ukulele. Teddy's in the corner crying and drinking things that aren't intended for human consumption.
And they're like putting the kids to bed.
Yeah.
So they get all the kids to go to sleep. The chubby kid, I cannot remember his name.
Max,
is just a little punk. And he's constantly like, but I want to play mini golf. And the teacher's like, no. Go to bed.
That's like 100% of his concern. Yeah. And then it cuts back to the army people, and they're talking again about, like, oh, it's zombies again. Oh, man, again.
Are these ones slow or fast?
Oh, at least they're slow. So this is, like, totally old hat for them.
Like,
they've dealt with this so
apparently
often.
This happens a lot. I want to know how many times they've come to this farm. Because it's right next to the testing facility.
Yeah. Maybe it's all, like, a big conspiracy or something.
Yeah.
But Tess, Felix's mom, is now outside the perimeter. She's gotten as close as the military will allow her, and she's leaving voicemails with her. Yeah. And she's in her car trying to get through to David's cell phone, but he doesn't have a signal, so she's leaving voicemails and is obviously very concerned. Meanwhile,
flashback to the gift shop. Felix isn't sleeping.
Yeah.
And so Dave goes over and he's like, hey, man, why aren't you sleeping? It's time to get some rest. And he's like, my girlfriend, I can't remember her name, is scared. And he's like, oh, she is. And then he's like, sometimes my mom says this rhyme that helps me go to sleep. And it's like about making the monsters go away.
Yeah.
And Dave remembers it because his sister, Felix's mom, used to say the same rhyme to him when he was little and would take care of him. So they say this rhyme together, and it calms down the girl, and they're able to go to sleep. So he, like, puts the kids to bed.
It's a pretty cute moment.
So cute. As a woman who loves nothing more than a man who's good with kids, I flashed over to Miss Caroline, who did the same thing that I did. And she was just like, hot dang, he's good with kids. You could just see the wheels turning in her head. So he gets the kids to go to sleep, and then he and Miss Caroline go have a conversation where they kind of talk about their lives, and he confesses to her, I'm a big old liar. I'm so sorry. Like, my band sucks, and they left me.
Like 6 years ago.
My girlfriend slept with somebody else, but technically I left her first, and we broke up, and because I suck, and, like, basically just gets real honest with her. And she tells him she's not really engaged. Yeah, she used to be, but her fiancé cheated on her, and she keeps the ring because it keeps the thirsty dads away. Which, I mean, you've been married a long time, but how many of the rest of us have not used a decoy ring? Like, I knew it had a term. I was trying to remember what it was. It's a real thing, especially when I worked in customer service, like food service. It was the worst. I'm sure that there are many people out there who there's no number of decoy rings that will keep their flirtations at bay anyway. Yeah. So, Miss Caroline has a past of her own. Oh, goodness. She explains that she came to Australia because she was following a band that she was completely in love with. She was a very different person back then. She followed them to Perth, and after their show, she broke into their hotel room
And she says that Taylor came out of the bathroom, and I knew this was coming a mile away because I thought, she's my age. The band she followed around 100% had to be Hanson. And when she said Taylor...
Which is funny, because my first instinct would have been Backstreet Boys or NSYNC, and Corinne went straight to Hanson. But that just goes to show where our loyalties lied in junior high.
Well, and I think it's more hilarious. Like, Hanson is the funnier option.
Well, and obviously because they had the one hit.
Yeah.
And, like, we're not a great band.
Which didn't stop me from memorizing their entire album.
Oh, yeah. I did not.
But. Well, for me, it was like a little bit of peer pressure. I was hanging out with two older girls that were in love with Hanson, and I just, wanted to be cool like them.
Yes, that absolutely was what it was. Yeah. And I didn't get into it because I did not have that situation. So.
No regrets. We had some pretty awesome times singing Hanson together. But anyway, so Taylor Hanson calls the cops on her, and she, leaps out a window to save herself and breaks her collarbone and ends up taking a job at a school to pay her medical bills.
Yeah, she's like, to pay my medical bills so I can go home.
Yeah. She ends up discovering that being able to, stand up in front of a group of small children who are looking at you with non-judgmental eyes and being able to interact with them and protect them, it was totally her calling. So she fell into it kind of backwards, but she was meant to feel like
a superhero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty great moment.
Yeah. It was pretty cute. Hanson made her become the world-class kindergarten teacher.
I think we all have those things that made us who we are today.
Bop is real inspirational.
So meanwhile, throughout this whole heart-to-heart conversation, all the zombies outside are just kind of standing there, looking inside.
They all just are lurking around the whole time.
Waiting for someone to let them in, I suppose. It cuts to the next morning, and the army is outside still making plans, and they set a deadline for themselves that the operation to bomb everything is going to commence in 1 hour.
Yeah.
Again, our heroes don't know this is happening, but Dave has an idea to get them out of this situation and back to their families. He wants to go get the tractor that they kind of came in on and escape. And Teddy thinks this idea is totally stupid, because a tractor is slow. He thinks they should go get the McGigglemobile, which is his van that has, the hole in the top for Frogsy to pop up out of and talk to people.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of a solid plan. He's like,
vans go faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's solid on all sides, unlike the tractor that has, a wagon that it's pulling.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, we can drive it right up to this building. The kids climb out the roof. They drop into the van from the top. They don't even have to, go through the zombies.
Yeah.
Totally solid. So Miss Caroline stays in the souvenir shop with the children, and Teddy and Dave go up on the roof. Dave has a couple of buckets. He's going to distract the zombies, and Teddy is going to, run through them.
Yeah.
And it's yet another scene of Teddy just crying. He's, contemplating the sea of zombies that he has to get through, and he's not just handling it very well. That's when he's, downing the nail polish remover.
That might be when he squirts hand sanitizer in his mouth.
I think so.
And you're just like, oh, buddy.
He's using whatever he can to, be brave and do what he has to do. So, Dave is kind of leaning over the roof and banging the buckets together, and Teddy, I can't tell if he's supposed to, rappel backwards off the roof with a rope, or if he meant to just sort of fall backwards.
I think he was supposed to swing, Tarzan/Robin Hood style, just swing down in, and instead he just falls off the back of the roof.
Just totally falls on his butt.
Yeah.
But he does make it to the van. And Dave makes it there seconds later, and right as the words, "Is he going to do the right thing?" came out of Jill's mouth, he does the wrong thing.
It was as he gets in the van, I'm like, are we really trusting him to do the right thing? And just as I said that, he locks all the doors and won't let Dave in.
Yep, so predictably...
And starts flipping him off from inside.
He doesn't care. He's like, nope, I'm safe, I'm fine. And from the back of the van comes a very bloody frog sock puppet attached to a man's arm. And they just start eviscerating Teddy and, pulling out his intestines. It's pretty gross.
And, pulled off part of his face. Yeah. It was hilarious.
It was a pretty great, well-deserved death scene.
Yeah. So Dave climbs on top of the van because he's getting surrounded by zombies. Mm-hmm. He has nothing else to do.
And since he's now outside of the souvenir shop and on top of the van, his cell phone finally gets a signal again. And his sister is able to get through to him.
And he's like, I'm here with the kids and Miss Young. And he starts telling his sister, I'm so grateful for everything you did for me. I just want you to know, like, I really love you. And before he went out to the van, he did the same thing with Felix. Like, he was like, you are an awesome, brave kid. And I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
Like,
don't listen to the
are
haters.
The coolest kid ever. And Felix is like, why are you telling me this? And he's just like, love you, bud. And like leaves. Because I think he knows there's a good chance he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
And so he's doing the same thing with his sister, where he's just like, I love you and I appreciate you so much. Everything you've ever done for me is incredible. Like, you're amazing. And he drops his phone and all you hear is this like, like zombie noises.
Yeah, miscellaneous zombie sounds.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, back in the souvenir stand, Max is freaking out about putt-putt golf again.
Oh my gosh, yes.
He has 100% total meltdown.
Not quite yet. Or is that right then?
Mm-hmm.
He's doing that while Felix disappears. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Max is having a total meltdown. He wants to play putt-putt golf. He's screaming so much that I was like, holy crap, he's going to have like a breath-holding seizure or something.
Seriously, like he was having one of those tantrums that like I can't even describe it. Like,
but if you've seen a child freak out to this level, you know
what
what
it reminds me of? That Swedish commercial where it just says the kid like freaking out in the grocery store and his dad is just standing there like, I can't believe this is happening. And the kid is like screaming and freaking out, throwing a huge old tantrum, and then it's a condom commercial.
I forgot all about that. Yes, that is the level of tantrum that Max is having. Yes. A birth control level tantrum. So as he's freaking out, the zombies are just closing in. He's getting them all riled up. They're like banging on the windows. He's definitely got their attention. And then the little girl asks, where's Felix? And Miss Caroline whips around. Felix is gone. And they realize he has left.
She's doing that whole like, Miss Caroline, Miss Caroline, Miss Caroline. And she's clearly busy. And she's finally like, what? And she's like, Felix is gone. And points to the little hole they all crawled in. And Felix, amazingly, puts on his Darth Vader outfit, grabs a putt-putt golf club, and just goes out into the zombie horde.
Yep. He's like running through the thankfully slow zombies. Yep. Like to Darth Vader music.
And he's doing like pew 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 noise as he like runs past them with his putt-putt golf club. And the whole time you're like, Tony, Felix, I love him so much.
Yeah, that would have been unforgivable.
Yeah.
So he sees the cutest goat you've ever seen in your life, like a baby goat of maximum adorableness.
Yes.
And the baby goat lures him into a closed space, like an alleyway sort of thing, where there's no exit, and the zombies are closing in on him. Jill shouting, "You're killing me, Smalls!" at the television set. And yes, Felix like reaches out a hand in his little Darth Vader costume and force pulls the gate closed to keep the zombies out. Which, like, what?
It just happens.
He just has superpowers after all. They don't draw any more attention to it than that. No. It cuts back to Dave on top of the van, and he's pretty much, like, resigned to his fate at this point until he sees a tiny Darth Vader driving a tractor and coming to his rescue.
Oh, the other best part about Dave being on top of the van is Frogsy. The Frogsy puppet comes out the little hole in the top and starts trying to eat him.
Which is totally like my absolute favorite episode of Red Dwarf, where Rimmer has the little penguin puppet, Mr. Flibble. He keeps saying like unsettling things like, "Oh, we couldn't do that, Mr. Flibble. Who'd clean up the mess?"
Oh my gosh, I love Red Dwarf.
So Felix comes to the rescue. And Dave is super excited. He's like, "I told you you're the bravest kid that I know." And he jumps on the tractor with him. It's very triumphant.
Yes.
And
he, like, pulls him on his lap, and Felix is like, "The clutch is on the left." And he's like, yeah, the clutch is on the left.
And then he tells him, "Stay in character." And Felix goes, "The clutch is on the left."
It's the cutest thing.
It's so adorable. So they cut back to Miss Caroline and the other kids, and the camera pans slowly over to a mural of a farmer on a tractor seconds before they burst through that same wall on the tractor.
On the tractor.
Coming to everyone's rescue. And
so they all get on the cart, and Miss Caroline says, "Who wants to play putt-putt?" And Max is like, "Ooh, me!" And she hands him a golf club. So as they're going on the tractor, he's whacking zombies with the golf club.
But with the strength of a 5-year-old boy. So it's like bonk, bonk.
Tink, tink. But it's like working. It's like knocking them back a little.
And the zombies are chasing after them. And then they do an overhead shot of the tractor pulling the trailer and all the zombies. And you can tell from the overhead that they're moving at all of 5 miles per hour.
So slow.
So slow.
So Miss Caroline is trying to keep the kids distracted. So she's like, let's all sing a song. And because the kids by this point are like, we don't want to play this game anymore. And she's like, I know, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to save your life. But without trying to scare them. So they all start singing Wheels on the Bus. They start singing Wheels on the Bus, and the zombies kind of join in. Mm-hmm. Oh, no. Then they stop singing Wheels on the Bus, and the zombies, like, get mad.
Yeah, they liked the song.
So they start singing, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And the zombies all clap their hands.
But, like, in an uncoordinated zombie-like fashion.
If you're happy and you know it, shout hooray, and they all go, It's really great. So they're having a sing-along with the zombies and moving at a snail's pace towards the army. So they're approaching the army barricade, and there's a general, and they're like, what is that? Is that kids singing? And, like, Dave on the front of the tractor is screaming, we've got kids here. You have to let us out. And the general's like, I will not shoot kids again.
That again
and there's
slayed
like
me.
No explanation.
Well, I assume it was a prior zombie outbreak.
Right?
Maybe even at this exact same petting
Seriously. And the other soldier's like, but it's against protocol. And he's like, I don't care about protocol. So they decide to let the kids in. So they let the kids through, and then they close in on the zombies. And they're all, like, telling the soldiers, like, they like it when you sing songs, sing of songs. And they all just open fire. And the kids all are like, no, it's loud, and cover their ears.
Oh, there's a lot of gore here.
A stealth bomber and 2 F-16s fly overhead and go and bomb the gift shop.
And Miss Caroline, eager as always to help explain things in a way kids can process, is like, oh, fireworks!
Yeah.
And as they're basking in the warm glow of the bombings, all these, like, guys in hazmat suits start dragging them from behind and stuffing them into a van.
And Miss Caroline and David kiss when they get through. Yeah. And that's when she goes, oh, look, fireworks! Mm-hmm. It's very gross.
Very cute.
Yeah. So then they pull them all into this van. So then it shows the general, and he's inside the army base, and he's like, where am I going? The good news room or the bad news room?
That made me laugh so hard. It was so subtle. But picturing, like, because there were so many other kids at the petting zoo that were zombies.
Other people.
Picturing their parents in one room.
Yeah. Ugh. So they're like, the good news room. And he's like, yay. And so he walks in, and you can see, like, the sister and all the kindergarten parents. And he tells them, like, your kids' teachers are amazing. They saved all the kids. And they're like, teachers? They only have one teacher. And he's like, yeah, Audrey Caroline. Which is when we're like, aha, she has 2 first names.
That is her genuine name.
And, oh, we forgot to talk about the really cute part. Backup.
Oh, right. The song.
Where when Miss Audrey Caroline is talking to Dave in the gift shop, she tells him she's also a big Neil Diamond fan. And so then he gets all the kids to help him sing Miss Caroline to her. And it was freaking adorable.
It was really
FYI.
Cute. And then Jill and I were thinking about how great Stumptown is. It was a whole thing.
So good. If you haven't watched Stumptown, you should. So then, even if just for the opening scene. So they, in the room with the parents, they tell them all, oh, well, David and
Miss
Caroline saved all your kids. And his sister is like, what? David helped save all the kids? You know, like, she's, like, surprised but really touched. And they're like, well, where are our kids? Are they okay? And they're like, they have to stay in quarantine for 48 hours, but they're fine. And they're like, quarantine? Like, are they so scared? What's wrong? And they're like, no, they're fine. And they take them into this, like, isolation tent. Mm-hmm. And they're all, like, in army-issued sweats. And David and Miss Caroline are like leading them in a round of Shake It Off.
Yeah.
And all the kids are loving it, having the time of their lives, no cares in the world. And the parents all walk in and see him all in the tent and are just like totally moved and touched. And his sister's like all crying, and it's really cute.
It was a really cute.
And it ended on a really cute moment, but we said we're going to sing Shake It Off for the rest of our lives because
it has been in my head this entire time that we've been talking. But yeah, then it ends. And it was one of those uplifting endings where you're like, I'm so glad I watched that. That was fun and entertaining, and sure it wasn't scary, but it was a good zombie movie. It, like we said, it's not perfect. It's no Shaun of the Dead, which is my all-time 5 out of 5 zombie horror comedy favorite.
It is pretty great.
But it's super solid. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it was an Australian film before we started watching it.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about how we were talking about Darkness Falls, filmed in Australia, and how they should have just made it an Australian movie.
So this was good because they made it an Australian movie, even though not everyone in it was Australian.
But they explained that really well. There weren't any big glaring plot holes. They did a really smooth job.
They kind of closed it all up. Like, of course the 5-year-old knows how to drive a tractor.
Yeah. It was really fun. So I'm very glad that we stumbled upon that.
Me too.
So... not related to this movie, but other horror things going on that I'm excited about. I am reading Dr. Sleep.
Ooh.
I've had it for a while, but haven't actually read it because it's one of those weird things, you know, where like The Shining is one of my all-time favorite horror books ever written. And sequels can kind of mess things up sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
And like taint the original if they're not done right. So I was really, really reluctant to read it. And I'm only a few chapters in, but I'm really enjoying it. It's good stuff. So I'm very excited to watch Dr. Sleep when we can. Mm-hmm. Not sure when that comes out.
I want to say soon.
Yeah. And then also watching season 2 of Castle Rock, speaking of Stephen King. And that is excellent so far.
Which I have not watched any of, so I probably should.
That's another Hulu original. So if you're watching this and you've got Hulu, that's another one that I definitely recommend watching. Especially if you've either read a bunch of Stephen King books or you've seen the adaptations, because they do a whole lot of little, like, nods and...
well, now I have to watch it.
Yeah, it's great. So, lots of good horror going on, which you would expect for the fall. By the time this airs, it'll be All Saints' Day, November 1st.
Yeah.
So, Halloween will have just ended. We hope you all had an amazing Halloween and did lots of spooky things. And thanks for listening. This has been Scream Girl Squad.
Bye.
Bye.